Welcome back to season 9. We are so excited you guys are with us today. Yet again, we want to encourage you, if you are not on YouTube, come over and watch us. You don't have to just listen to us anymore, which is, I would say sometimes a bonus, sometimes not.
I mean, now I have to get out of my PJs to do this, but
yeah, that is an unfortunate thing for sure. Okay, we're going to start off today as we do always with a review from one of you. This is from Mom Brule, I believe is how you pronounce it, Wisconsin. So powerful. It says, wow, so thankful I stumbled upon your story podcast. My husband and I are walking through a similar story currently, and I really appreciate your authenticity and vulnerability. Thank you. So that's amazing. Thank you for that.
that's awesome.
Wonderful little short version of your story. We appreciate it so much. It is very encouraging. If you have not taken the time to give us a review, do it. Do it. Yeah, do it. Now you can actually, you can rate on YouTube too, right? I'm just thinking about this. Yes, you can
like them.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean,
I have never been a big YouTube person. You are the YouTube person and I'm a podcast person.
Yeah, I know. It's weird.
Like, ask Brad how many podcasts he listens to. How many, baby?
I don't.
I was
Here's
like,
the thing.
Ask Brad. It was like he was waiting for someone to ask him.
I thought it was rhetorical.
Okay.
Like everyone knew it was 0 by the way you set it up. So no, it's not. I don't listen to podcasts regularly, and I should.
Yeah.
I tell people to listen to ours regularly. Like I should probably do it.
You should.
Right? But I have listened to some. Like I've sent you one, or I sent you probably a couple. But I can think of one specifically that I've sent you, and I don't even think you've listened to that.
Part of it I listened to.
So,
bringing it back.
But around. I do send you shorts off of YouTube
all the time. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Sometimes I actually wonder. I feel like there's a lot of people who can relate to this. Like you just wonder, like, what does your spouse actually do during the day? Because you get so many various little reels or shorts or memes that you're just like, but do you actually work? Like, what are you doing?
No, I actually do work.
Yes, I do. I do work.
I don't understand.
Thank you, baby, for clarifying. Anyways, we had asked before we actually started this season, we asked our followers on Instagram some topics that they actually wanted to hear about. And this has come up consistently, and we've never done a full episode on it. But it's specifically the whole walking through with your kids when you've gone through something, when you're in pain, when your marriage is in pain. Infidelity, yes, but just in general, like how do you handle it with your kids? And I think this is a really heavy topic because, of course, if you are a parent that is trying to do your best, you obviously recognize the level of influence that you have on your kids, and they are watching, and you're trying to take it so seriously. And so this weighs really, really, really heavy. And so we wanted to talk about our own experience, the things that have helped us, possibly even some mistakes we've made along the way that will hopefully help you not make the same mistakes, and hopefully give them an idea of how to navigate it in a healthy way. So go ahead, baby. How do we talk to the kids? I just want, sometimes Brad just looks like he's getting too comfortable over there. So I'm just like,
I'm not. I was just the exact opposite.
Right, you yawned while I was talking.
But do you even know what that is?
Do I even know what is?
Yawning.
What is it, baby? Oh, gosh.
So, no, seriously. So, like, you'll see, people, like, you'll see, like, athletes before they start doing something, you'll see them yawning. They're not tired. It's like they're getting extra, like, oxygenation.
Is that what you were doing right now?
I'm not tired.
You were oxygenating?
I'm not tired. I'm not bored.
Okay.
I'm not.
Did you feel the need to oxygenate?
Yes, I feel it again right now.
Okay.
Because we're talking about it. I think that's a thing, right? Like if you talk about yawning, empathy, you start yawning.
It's if you see someone yawn.
Well, maybe I just have so much empathy that even if I think about yawning, I start to yawn.
I think that's it.
That must be
for sure.
So no, I wasn't comfortable at all. What I was thinking was I was a little bit scared of this topic.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, I don't know if scared or ignorant about it. I don't know. Because, so I don't, I remember telling our 17-year-old, I remember telling him, but not well, we'll get into that. I remember telling him, I think you talked to Aubrey, our oldest daughter. Our oldest is a daughter. And then we have 2 boys. And I think
so right now our kids are 19, 17, and 13.
Yeah.
So when all this went down, which if you haven't heard our story and you're so confused as to what we're talking about, we give a detailed, explanation of our story on episodes 80 and 81 of the podcast. So at this time we were not on YouTube, so you'll have to actually go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. So episode 80 and 81 is both his side and her side. So we walked through infidelity and the divorce process, and we were separated for about 9 months, not living in the same house. And our marriage was hopeless. Like, it really was hopeless. And so in that process, which I don't even actually know if you remember some of the details of walking through that with the kids when everything was going down. We laugh because there's so many things that Brad doesn't remember that are just like these memories that are stuck in my head. But we did actually talk to the kids at that time because of the fact that we were walking through the divorce process and you were out of the house.
We talked to the kids about being divorced. Yeah.
Yep. And my encouragement in that process, like, obviously kids, man, they're so wise to knowing when something is out of the ordinary in the house. And if you don't have some level of having a conversation, in general with your kids, they have a tendency to think it's something to do with them, right? Because we're all, we have a tendency to focus on me, right? And how is it that this affects me, or what am I doing that seems to make everything go wrong? And so it is important to have conversations with your kids when things are going on. But I think a tendency for most people is that when we share something, we do feel like we have to share all the things.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to our kids, this is not the healthy way to try to help them to understand details that even as adults we can't fully understand.
And I think what it comes down to, because we've gotten this a lot, is the victim. You say victim, or betrayed. How do we say the betrayed? Yeah, I don't like victim.
I know you don't, babe.
I don't even know why I said victim, but the betrayed, because I don't like that. But anyway, the betrayed is usually, in our experience, not our specific experience, but helping others, is usually the person that wants to overshare or make sure they share everything, even to their kids, because it's like this is how I'm going to, make him look bad or make her look bad.
Right.
Right. Like, you hurt me so bad, so I'm going to hurt you bad. And this is how I'm going to hurt you bad. I'm going to tell the kids everything.
Yeah. Or they use their kids as like a confidant or like a support system. And that's not healthy for your
because we didn't tell. Yes, we told the kids we're, getting divorced. I vaguely remember that. I don't remember how that went, because I was in a different place at that time. But, fast forward, and we didn't tell. Well, I don't know when our oldest kind of knew what had gone on, but I know we didn't tell our middle child till probably a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, and I want to back up a little bit because, so we're talking 12 years now. I think 12 years that have passed since this time, even longer. That was the end of 2011. But I want to talk to somebody that's probably in the middle of this situation right now and wondering, well, how the heck do I navigate this with my kids, and trying to share like why mom or why dad is not here so much. And, I'm in pain. Like I'm in excruciating pain, and I'm supposed to put on a good face and just act like everything's fine, but I'm losing it.
Well, I'll stop you real quick.
Okay.
I'm not a woman, but
thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, I feel like I have to do this clarification before I say this, because I don't think that you have to put on that face.
Well,
I don't think that you need to do that.
But this is what you're going through. Is like, so when you're in that space, I'll push back a little bit. There there's not an opportunity, or there wasn't an opportunity for me to just lose it.
Okay, so what I'll push back on.
Okay, well, I'll push back on you.
I'm gonna push. No, what I'll push back on is I'm not thinking of your day to day, like,
Okay.
your obligations, right? Or, just
I feel
obligations.
like that's such a man way to think.
I know, it's not obligations.
I'm not thinking about your day-to-day pain. I'm thinking of the overall arching theme here. Just, you shouldn't have to suck it up. Like, it's fine. Like, what?
I've never had that accent. Okay.
Now you do.
So no. What I mean is, like, there's things as a mom, whether you're working or not, that you have to do, right? You're gonna have to help the kids get ready, make them breakfast, all those things. And it's hard. I'm being empathetic right now. So
you're gonna yawn while you're doing
yeah,
that.
I feel that it's got to be excruciating to just be like, okay, I have to act. These are normal. This is the normal routine, so I have to go through that. That's not what I'm talking about. Where you have to, put this face on, right? Where or suck it up, however you want to say it. Because in those times there is this. I feel there's this routine that needs to happen, and it mainly needs to happen not just for the kids but for you.
Yeah.
Because it is like, okay, this is what we do every day. We're gonna have to do this. What I'm saying is the times that it's not like that, right? There's not that routine where it's normal day-to-day stuff that's going on, but you're not making breakfast, you're not making lunch. Like, there's nothing that needs to happen. It's just kind of, when your kids are home and it's just kind of like you're just home. Like, I don't feel, and of course, you're going to push back on me.
No,
I don't feel
I was going to explain all
that you have to put the face on at that time.
No,
because I feel that
I agree.
Kids, we have to protect our kids, but also kids are a lot more resilient than we think. And then on top of that, they probably know a little bit more than you think they know.
Yeah, and that's actually really hard. I mean, I think any parent, you want to protect your kids from pain and heartbreak and all of the dark things in this world. Like, you want to protect them. And what I mean is, like, so yeah, as someone who walked through the day to day, I will concur with you. Concur, you like that? I'll concur with you. Like, for me now, I can look back at all the necessities of the day to day things that had to be done as God's grace in my life. But I wanted to have like 2 weeks in the woods where I could just like scream at the wall. It was like I just wanted to be like, let myself kind of feel the pain in such a way that I could feel like I would get over the hurdle faster. And the necessity of day to day, making sure all the things were going as they normally do. Now I can see it as God's grace. And if somebody's in the middle of this right now, if you can kind of continue to keep that perspective of God's grace, of the necessity of daily life. And I think if anyone has gone through any level of grief, you recognize, like, you want the world to stop, but it doesn't, right? Laundry's still there. Dishes are still there. People still need to eat. But it's God's grace, because you have to get up. You have to do the things, right? But yes, you also have to allow for grief. And your kids do see something's not right. And you want your kids to know that it is okay to experience those emotions. It's okay to feel. How you respond in those feelings is also really important. The kids knew when you were gone. Yeah, there were times I would have tears running down my face, and it was not a controllable thing. It was like inadvertent, some song came on, or, just in general, like you're walking through grief. You don't always have this, complete control of your emotions in that moment. And so in the middle of that, and I would have just tears running down my face, I remember the kids they were like a comfort to me, right? Mom, it's going to be okay. I remember our 6-year-old at the time saying things that were so just powerful, just messages from God that she didn't even know she was giving me. It was her telling me even like, Daddy loves you, and I'm just like, oh girl, I wouldn't know. But I this is why I wanted to touch on this. In those moments, I did not give in to negating what she was saying to me and or demeaning you. And I think that's important in the process, because ultimately you do have to know in any kind of reconciliation, whether or not it's going to be you on your own and it's your kids, or whether it's going to be the marriage, you ultimately do hope and desire that your kids will have a good relationship with either your husband or your wife that's not there, because that's healthiest for them. And so you do have to supersede some of your own emotions, and making sure that you don't then go to like a belittling mannerism with your spouse that is obviously doing the things wrong. You can't be like, well, if your dad was doing this, then it would all be fine. Or, well, I guess your dad doesn't even love any of us, and that's why he's not here. And I think that's our human side, is that we want to, almost go down that road. I mean, I remember telling the kids over and over again, like, we would pray. It was very simple. I'm sure we'll probably get some counselors that tell me this is the wrong thing to say. But I remember in very simple terms, you were gone, we were getting a divorce, and saying, Daddy's not listening to Jesus right now, but we're praying that he does. And he loves you. And he loves you so much. He loves you so much. And it was just very, very simple. And for their minds, that made sense, because they knew what it was like to not listen to Jesus sometimes. And they also knew what it was to pray. And they were also wanting you to begin to do that and to come home. And we didn't even pray for you to come home. It was just like, and we're praying that Daddy will start listening to Jesus. That was it. And it was very, very basic. So, and I wanted to touch on that just because if there is somebody in that situation right now, just being careful how much you share, right? Obviously, but then how you do speak about your spouse is really important for your kids' hearts. And I think if you think about anything in your life, right? You want to be known as like a father and a mother who love their kids, and that their kids know that my mom and my dad, they love me, right? And so you want to protect that. Even if your husband or your wife is completely failing in the marriage, you want to protect the relationship as a father, as a mother. Protect that. Like, no matter how they hurt you, protect your kid's heart in that. And I just really wanted to encourage somebody in the middle of that process, because that is not an easy thing to do. Because this really weird thing happens, I think, when you're betrayed, is it's almost like you want your kids to love you more. I don't know if that exactly makes sense, but it's just like, I want them to see that I'm the one who stayed. I'm the good one. And I don't know if that makes entirely, if it makes complete sense, but that's kind of this weird thought process that's going through, because I think you've lost this great love that was supposed to kind of be this safety net. And so in a way, you want to bring your kids alongside you, almost like they're on my side, almost to justify. And you have to fight against that, because I think that's within anyone. Whenever you feel wronged, is you want people to be on your side, because I've been wrong. So like, I'm the right one. Come over here. Like, don't ask to spend time with your dad. He doesn't even care. Right? Don't ask to get on the phone with your dad. Like, oh wow, I guess his 30 seconds that he spent on the phone with you, I guess that's all he cares about. Those little comments will come very, very naturally, even if it's not in your nature. And I just think that's really important, if you're navigating through it right now, that you see very clearly the impact that your words can have on the future relationship that your kids have with either your husband or your wife, because ultimately that's healthy for them. That was a long rant, but I wanted to make sure we touch base on it before we got into when they were older.
Yeah.
So yeah, we did not then really openly, once we did decide to reconcile, we did not openly have conversations with our kids about kind of that process. But I will say something that we did from the time that the kids were little, because it was like they were super happy that you were home. And I think in their minds, they kind of justified the time you were gone as almost work.
Well, because I would travel.
Because you traveled a lot. Yeah. And so I think that's kind of how they reconciled that in their mind. And then we also moved. And so that kind of helped them to be like, oh, like this is all new. Right. And we did always talk to them from the time they were little about how our family was a miracle. Like we did use that language frequently. If there was ever, something that even came up that was like kind of a hint of that area, we just like we're our family is a miracle. Our marriage is a miracle. And we use that phrase a lot. But I think the idea of telling the kids any more details on that was scary for both of us.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think for me, it was the what are they going to think, about me. Right. But also that I don't think they were old enough at that time to really, like I wouldn't have thought it would be appropriate to sit them down at that age and be like, okay, here's.
Yeah, they don't even know what sex is, right? And then you're going to try to explain like the brokenness that happens when, it wouldn't have been appropriate at all.
No, but I think that moving and, telling them that how, our family now it's a miracle, like that, and just reinforcing that, I think that was appropriate at that time, like what to do.
Yeah. And then I think also I don't think we really realized that we were doing this, but we did begin to, I think, affirm our love more in front of our kids once we did begin the reconciliation process. I don't distinctly remember beforehand where we really worked on like even physical affection in front of the kids.
Yeah, but I think before, like we've talked about this because, in other episodes, but before that, we had a good marriage.
Right.
But I don't think we were very intentional with anything, really.
Yeah, we assumed we were going to be all good for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, so I don't think we were very intentional with any of that. And I think that there's this place of understanding when you've gone through that. I mean, I think there's a place of understanding no matter what, but especially if you've gone through this, what we went through, coming back to it and knowing how important it is, one, for us to connect, like our, the hierarchy of our family changed.
Yeah.
Right. It was God first. And then after that, it was you.
Yeah.
And then the kids, it was a distinct shift than it was before. And I know their kids were little during that season, so it's a little bit different, but still there was this shift because they were still little when we got back together and started reconciling. But what was, they started seeing there was a babysitter there once a week.
Yeah.
Like we were going out. They started seeing all these things where we were being very, very intentional with each other and with growing that relationship.
And this is what I think is really cool about something like that. A lot of times I think we feel like we neglect our kids when we pay attention to our marriage. Mm-hmm. I think the more that we invested in one another during that season, the safer our kids felt. Mm-hmm. Like they just felt more and more secure in that relationship, that it wasn't going anywhere, that we loved each other. Yeah. That it was not just this show that was being put on. It was like, no, mom and dad are doing the things, and not that they could formulate all of those thoughts and ideas and emotions at that time, but this sense of safety was reinforced every time that we in front of them were showing affection, loving one another, investing time, money, all that stuff. It reinforced that for them. And, that's such a huge basis for them to know that security was there, because when you don't have that, man, it's such shaky ground, whether you're a kid or whether you're a spouse, just not feeling safe. And so I think that that's really cool that the more that we did that, I saw that affirmed in their eyes too. And then, we walked through kind of years and really began to one-on-one minister to couples that were going through painful situations. You would talk to guys, I would talk to women.
Yeah, I think that during that, because you started helping women.
Before I was ready, yes.
Oh, I wasn't going to say that.
No, but it was definitely like, I'm like, no, I'm not ready.
But I think where it really hit me was when we started all this. When God called us to like, you're going to do, this is
like
your
in a public
right?
platform.
Yeah. Because we were never, like, I'll step back a little bit or rewind a little bit. We were never super quiet about, like, we weren't walking around like waving a banner, but we were never very quiet. Like our family knew, but also it wasn't the secret that we were hiding.
Yeah.
That it was like, okay, we're not ever going to talk about this again. We're moving on. That really was never the case. It was more of,
I think we were kind of forced, like walking through a divorce. It was like, we're ending. Like, so it became kind of public. And then when we moved here, it was like, we're not going to be secretive.
yeah. And so it was, we were semi-comfortable with just, being open about what we had walked through, not necessarily like, details or anything like that, but just open about what we walked through. But I think where it really hit me, because I knew one day we'd have to sit the kids down.
Yeah.
Right. Like I knew just without Unrelenting Pursuit, without, all these things that God pushed us into, without that, I knew there'd be a day where it was like, hey, I got to tell you a story, but it wasn't when we started this and then couples would actually come into the house. I don't know if you remember that. I mean, I know you remember that. I don't remember times, but they would like come in the house and, we'd sit around the table and have coffee. I think it was even before we started like actual podcast stuff. But we're getting ready to do this. And also at church, we were kind of being pushed to like, I was always pushed. I've told the story before. I was always pushed to get on stage. And like, hey, would you share a little bit of something? And I'm always like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going up there. I'm not ready, and even now I'll get up and speak, no issue. And if they, like, hey, we want you to share your testimony, like all day. But even that makes me a little nervous when the kids are there.
Yeah.
Right. Because we haven't sat down with our youngest yet, but something a friend told me helped me in the process of sharing. Right. And close friends of ours. And because we talked about this specifically.
Yeah.
And
we knew we were dragging our kids into the public sphere of it all as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this was all starting and it was like, what are we doing? And I was very concerned with, because not that I don't want to share with my kids, but what are they going to see?
Yeah.
Or how are they going to react? Mm-hmm. Like what's going to happen when this,
you feel like you're breaking innocence.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
she told us, she was like, you don't even realize, like they see couples coming in and out of the house. And sometimes they see them come out, crying or whatever. And then they see us like going to work or help them, And so she was just making the point that she's like, there is this aspect of they know something, but what they're seeing is God using you to help.
And she was so encouraging in that to say, like, it's just going to make sense.
Yeah.
It's just all going to make sense. And I think for both of us, that brought some clarity to us sharing our story, was realizing that what she said, it was so true, that it would just make sense. Like they had seen, you don't normally just have couples coming in and who are upset and, we're going to another area and having this conversation, and, parents who are so passionate about marriage. And she said, it's just going to make sense. It's just going to be very clear to them. And I feel like I'm like crying now, because every time you cry, it makes me cry. It's super annoying. And now I'm on YouTube, so I can't even blow my nose, like secretly.
It was never a secret, first of all.
Anyways.
It was never.
Yes, it was. I think, like for both of the kids, both the older kids having the conversations, I did feel like it was very God ordained times that we had them. I had the conversation individually with our oldest, because I really just felt like it was time, and the door opened. And I think both of us have learned over a long period of time that, you don't just stare at the open door and just like say like, well, this doesn't seem like a really great time. And like, nope, it's got to be Brad and I, we got to sit down. It's got to be this perfect thing. And like, no, it was a necessary moment in that time. And when I did share with her, she had already kind of dug a little bit. At the time, she had been on social media, which is why I knew I needed to have the conversation with her. And so it brought a lot of clarity to her, and it also brought a clarity to her in some of the things that she had felt over the years. And so it was really healthy, and I was able to, I think, kind of speak to some of the wounds that she had. She was the oldest at the time; she was 6, so she knew things but didn't know why.
Yeah.
And so I was able to kind of bring some clearer pictures to that, and I saw her, and I mean, it's a beautiful thing. You got me super emotional now. But it's a beautiful thing to see your brokenness lead to your kids wholly following after God. And I get to see that. That's really beautiful for me. So I see her now, on the mission field and telling people about Jesus, and she's proud of us for sharing our story. That's a really cool thing. Eventually perspective gives you the capacity to see, in the middle of the mess, the miracle. And I think you get to see that as you get older. Yeah. I know that our marriage will be something that I pray will help our own kids in their own marriages to fight, to stay in it, to do what it takes. And I know a lot of people don't get that example. So as much as I hate what our story is, I'm so thankful for the beautiful parts of the brokenness that a lot of people don't get.
Yeah, it's a weird place to be in because, I don't want, it's kind of like.
Yeah, you don't want a broken story.
No, absolutely. And it's sort of like, I've talked to the kids too, where it's like, I remember sitting in church and like the missionary or, a guest speaker would come in and they'd have this like crazy testimony, like
so cool.
I used to be in gangs and, this and that and, all these things and God saved me. And it's like, and here I am right now, doing this thing. And I always thought it was neat to hear that, but also I'm like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Thinking that as a kid, it's like, oh, do I have to go through some traumatic thing? And so like, I pray that our kids, when they do get married, that they have the marriage we have without, the mess that we had to go through, right, to get there. And I wish that we would have been able to do that without.
And we wish that for you. If you haven't had to go through it, please.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like that's like one of my biggest prayers. Like that's what I want to happen. But it's weird because I am thankful on weird levels, right? That I guess I'm thankful because of where we're at now and thinking, what would we have been if nothing happened?
Right.
And God could do amazing things with, He could have pushed us into this, what we're doing now. Absolutely. But we thought we had a good marriage, but we didn't have a marriage that we have now, so it's a weird place to be in. And I'm weird with the way that I think in some ways I'm.
I thought you were just going to stop and I'm weird.
No,
That's where I was going to
So it's very strange. But the key thing I wanted to hit on with what you were talking about when you told our daughter was that the opportunity arose.
And it was very natural.
Yeah, and I think that's a key aspect of sharing this pain. And if you are reconciling, like sharing that piece to your kids, it's not like, hey, let's sit down, we have something to talk about.
Don't take them to a restaurant that they love and then like break their heart, because that sucks.
Yeah. Well, side note. Side note, my mom is a cancer survivor and thriving today. But the first time that she got cancer, they took us to Red Lobster. And when I was little, I was like, Red Lobster.
Also, side note, they took me to Red Lobster, my family, to tell me my grandma had cancer. and she died. We both have bad Red Lobster experience.
I didn't know this.
Yeah.
And I like the biscuits at Red Lobster.
I know,
But
right?
anyway, yeah, they took me to Red Lobster and dropped this on me. And I'm like, I mean, the very real cancer, right? That, you just think, oh, that's a death sentence. Like,
Right.
that's it,
Especially as a kid.
Yeah. And then seeing like I saw my mom go through chemo and saw, all those things.
Right.
So it was very real. So yeah, you don't take them to a favorite restaurant. But what the point is, I don't think that you need to organize something and sit them down and go, okay, we have to talk. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this. It's going to be very serious. I need you guys to listen.
Your eyes right now.
What?
They're just like,
oh, I don't know what I'm doing. So even, so with our daughter, it came up naturally. And we, my daughter and I, we go out when she's home. I'm trying to get her to stay home a little longer. When we go out on Saturdays, we'll go out to breakfast or really just coffee and maybe a snack or something. And we talk a lot. And I know that after you told her, I can't remember 100%, but I know we went out and it was kind of like this weird dynamic because I knew she knew, so it was this weird, she wasn't making it weird. I know I was the one that was making it weird, because she's pretty good at just like,
should we talk about this?
Yeah. And we didn't talk about it, but it was just this weird aspect of like, oh, like, what happened. Right. And here you are. But what was neat about it is seeing there was no change in how she viewed me, or at least I didn't see it.
Yeah.
But there was the dynamic didn't change, and then the same, fast forward, I don't know if it was the same year or whatever, but fast forward and then a door opened and we were both there and it's just in our kitchen and it was time to tell our middle child.
Yeah. What I loved about that opportunity too is the way that conversation came about and what we were talking about made it so much more impactful to what we were going through. Is like, hey, we're not talking about this as two people who have not.
Yeah. It was very
down this road.
Real.
It was very real. Yeah. And he actually responded and like so appreciative that we would share it with him.
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh yeah, okay, you know what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And his response, I mean, of course, boys so often react differently than girls do anyways, but he responded so well and positively in the midst of all that. And I think in all of that, like my encouragement would be to be in prayer of when and how you need to have conversations and what you should say, in the midst of that. And remembering that you're still looking to honor both marriage and your spouse in the process of that conversation. Yeah,
the details.
Yeah,
like that's
are irrelevant.
They are so irrelevant, and like I'm gonna step on someone's toes right now. Like I'm gonna look right at you. I'm gonna step on someone's toes because we've helped couples, and there's been times where we're helping couples, and it's this like I'm seeing it usually the wife, and I'm seeing her bring up like detail and detail and detail over and over again. And all I see from this guy, and they want to work this out. They have made the decision. They want to reconcile and be together. And I just see him like a beat dog over and over. And I've said it. I'm like, if you want to move forward, you have to stop that. And then you have to pick each other up and move forward. You can't just keep like, all right, let's talk about it. Here's the detail. Here's the detail. It's not right. It's really not right. There's a time for healing.
Yeah.
And I know the full disclosure. I'm not a counselor. I know there's a disclosure form. You do all these things. I get it.
Well, right? And what we talked about is for a woman, so often it's to feel safe because she feels like if I keep reminding you, you won't do this.
Yeah.
Even though
where in reality, it's like we've literally seen it where it's like like they're making progress. Like you could see this weight off of them. And then all of a sudden she's like, swoop, and like hits him. And then you just see this weight and it's shame.
Yeah.
You see this shame like just drop right back down on top of him. I know we're getting off topic, but anyway, your kids don't need to know, like, here's all the details.
No, they don't.
It's really irrelevant. What's relevant is this is what happened. And this, and if you guys are reconciling, this is what happened, and this is what God's doing in our life now. Yeah. Everything should point back to what God's doing. Everything, right? There's always something that God's doing, and like you read in the Bible, Jesus performing all these miracles, doing all these things, and he even says, "I'm doing these things to glorify my Father." Yeah. Like this is why I'm doing it. It's not to win you over. It's because I want to show you, like, look what I could do. Look, because of God, like, look at this. I'm glorifying my Father, And so everything we do should be pointing straight back to him as well. And so it is the opportunity, like when we told our kids, it's like, yeah, this is what happened. Like when we told our middle child, this is what happened. Where we're at now. But also God did all these things through us. And he's continuing to work in us. And, it's all going back to God. We haven't told our youngest, but the day is coming, and I think it's coming faster than I'm comfortable with. Yeah. But I'm totally fine to do it. But that I think that'll be tough because I still feel, I know I miss so much of the baby stage of him. And at that stage, if you have babies, like our close friends, they have a baby and she's beautiful, and to see the changes and how quickly it happens. And like I'm reminded every time is like, yeah, I missed these key moments, not because I was gone for work, because I could probably swallow that a little easier than why I was gone, But I know that's coming up, and it's coming up because this is just weird how all this stuff works. One, he knows about our podcast. He knows we're on Instagram. He's helped us make reels. Like the kid's got an eye with the camera. It's wild. Like it is so wild. But like, yeah. So if you ever see like a reel with us and like the camera's like moving around, that's our youngest. It's not our oldest. Yeah, it's our little man doing it. But we help with youth at church now. I don't even know if we've talked about that at all yet, but we help with youth at the church, and we're so honored. And it was something that God, again, was like, no, you're not going to do a married group. You're going to go help with youth, and we're there, mentoring these kids and being there for these kids, and all, like my both boys are in there. Right. Mm-hmm. And some of these youths follow us on Instagram. Like, and there's been some we've talked about, they're like, you have a podcast? We're like, yeah, but you might want to be careful. Mm-hmm. Like,
It's going to hear all the things. like Brad's honey-do list.
You might want to be careful, but it's interesting because even some of my youngest friends that he's getting real close with, they follow us on Instagram, and whether they've dove into our pod or not, I don't know. But I mean, if you just go,
but we don't want him to hear it from any of his friends.
Exactly. We don't want that to come up. So I know that there's a time, that it's going to be, or even to the fact that he is a little man. So, we have these men's breakfasts, and both my boys go and they scurry off, and they're all like with the youths, like all the boys, and they're all over there by themselves. But even during that, it's like, man, stuff comes up, and it's like, I don't want him to find out from hearing our middle talk to someone else and they're bringing up something about like our podcast, or, oh geez, I saw that on Instagram, or, all these, however they talk, whatever, right?
However they talk.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not in all that lingo, but like,
but you try.
Yeah. But however they talk, and it's, I don't want that to be something that he hears it from. So I feel like I got to pray, just like you said. So I need to pray, like timing, and maybe for him, it is like, hey dude, like, we got to talk. Yeah. Maybe it is a point of that. Yeah. More.
For some reason, I feel like with him, it is more of that way. And I think it's actually important for you to think about how your kids handle conversations and how they respond emotionally, and to know that it might be different for every kid that you have a conversation with, and the questions they might ask or not ask. And yeah, you have to be prayed up for this.
It's so interesting too, because just knowing that, like knowing our kids' personalities, I wasn't there when you talked to Aubrey. I'm sure there was a lot of emotion. Our middle, well, I say their names or whatever. I just said like, doesn't matter. Like, well, okay. Oh no, their names, right? So, I was there when we talked to Gage about it, and I saw his response, a little emotional, but not like crazy, more thoughtful and like, well, wow, okay, I see now. Like putting all the. And that's how his brain works. He starts connecting all these dots and he's like, oh, okay. All right. This makes sense. Our youngest, he's more intertwined emotionally.
He is.
And he's not, and I'm not talking about like he starts crying here and throwing fits here. Not at all.
But
he is more sensitive and he's more in tune with our emotions.
Yep.
He's very in tune with them. And so that will be an interesting time. Like we'll have to get back to you guys on that.
Yeah.
Because that'll probably come sooner than later for sure. And that'll be interesting. But that is something where I want to pray that God opens the door, but it will be like a schedule where it's like, hey man, we gotta, we're going to have to sit down and talk, versus the other ones where it was just more natural. So I think as a parent, you're listening to this, you need to play off that. Like, how are your kids? How old are your kids?
Yeah.
And we didn't necessarily wait till they were older to do this, but that's kind of naturally how it progressed,
Yep. All of those things make a big difference. I think, challenge wise for this one, I think our biggest encouragement, because it's not just infidelity that you might have to have conversations with your kids about. I mean, there's so many topics, painful things that you have to navigate through with your kids. And, loss is and grief is a part of life. And you showing your kids how to go to Jesus in the middle of grief and loss and pain is one of the greatest gifts that you can give them. If you show them who ultimately has them, right? It gives them security in the midst of the worst storm. And that's so important. I know it sounds kind of like a simple challenge, but to me, it's just like, you need to pray. Like you really need to pray and you need to stay prayed up. You don't want to go into these conversations without giving out of an overflow. You don't want to be empty and then have those conversations. And then in the midst of that too, when you share your story, it can cause you to also go back into pain and shame. And so my encouragement too would to already think of those things ahead of time so you don't allow yourself to look that direction, but to look at the miracle. As we said, it's always to give glory to God. Your goal is to say, yeah, our story, his glory. And even if your story is in the middle of it, even if your story is broken, that does not mean that you are not redeemed by a holy and loving God and that he has a plan and purpose for your future. And so your story, his glory. And I think it's always pointing back to that.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll see you next week.